the president is back home. That's on the one hand. So welcome back, Mr. President. There's a lot that he has met. No doubt he has been hearing about it. Thank God for, the state of technology today. He wouldn't have missed a beat wherever he was. He was in France, but supposed to spend a week in France. It's turned out to, so here it is. But the president is coming back amidst protests, worries, agitations over food insecurity almost, the rising prices of food. And we hear that the president has swung into action immediately. I understand that meetings are going on all over the place on this particular subject matter. Okay, our guest this morning for us to look at it, and of course, needless to say, the House of Reps has, intervened in the matter, asking the federal government to open up the grain reserves. Okay, let me quickly introduce my guest this morning, Dr. Olukayode Oyeleye. He is an agriculture business analyst. As always, thank you very much, Dr. Oyeleye.
Thank you very much.
We're delighted you could come this morning. And we also have another person in the agricultural field who needs very little introduction, talking about African farmer Mogaji, former chairman, Agri Group of the Lagos Chamber of Chambers of Commerce and Industry. A fine morning to you, Mr. Mogaji.
Good morning.
Thank you very much.
See you again.
Yes, same here. Same here. Okay, I don't know. One has to be careful how one puts it. But if you were to ask a lot of people, they would say there's hunger in the land. Hunger and agriculture are often related. Let me just jump to the very first question that sort of reflects our topic matter. And since you are on remote, let me start from you. What do you think about the request of the House of Reps? Do you think they are right when you look at it from a professional point of view and also a strategic point of view? What do you think of that request that the federal government should open up the grain reserves? Have we got to that stage?
We were at that stage sometime last year. It's past tense because on your platform in TVC in the last almost 9 months, I had been raising the alarm that we're not food secure and that we needed to take drastic actions, especially when the president, before he was inducted and after he was inducted. But it just seems as if the managers of the agri sector in the country don't have an idea of what's really happening. Beyond the state capitals, most of the analysis and reports we get is mostly from the state capitals. But beyond the state capitals, many people don't have an idea of what the average Nigerian is going through in terms of practicality. So the request to open up the reserves is long overdue. Another thing is the quantity of what is in the reserves. Is another thing.
Okay.
Though there are options of people who have the businesses that have grains in storage, that government can buy from, but the reserves and co is another conversation that we may get to. Thank you.
All right, then. Dr. Oyeleye, do you agree with that, or are there aspects in which you see it differently?
Oh, I agree with him, absolutely. But I will also add this perspective. The food reserve that we're talking about, have we defined or rather identified what kinds of food we have there? Are we talking only of grains?
Yes.
Or tubers included?
No.
I mean, because these are issues. Now, if we're talking about grains, what kinds of crops? Is it corn alone, or rice, and some other, sorghum and stuff like that? And the issue is this: he talked about the quantity. We need to also find out the quantity in the reserve vis-a-vis the population that is to be targeted. And by what method is this grain, or are these grains going to be distributed to those that are most affected? Because there are categories of people that are more affected by the others. I mean, the way things are now, there are people who can still afford to eat, their normal number of meals daily, whereas there are those who had to, cut drastically down on the number of meals they eat or the quantity that they consume per day. So, who are the targets?
Okay.
And by what means are these targets going to be reached? Because this brings us back to the issue of statistics.
Yes.
So, if you don't have statistics, you would at best just throw these things all over the place
Haphazardly.
haphazardly. And at the end of the day, there will be that self-gratification that, yes, we have opened up the grain reserve and then we're giving the food out, but to who? Who are the recipients?
Okay. Now, before we continue, I haven't heard from both you gentlemen. This backdrop report of the situation that we're discussing this morning,
so that we can cite the relevant.
This is the second in the series of the sectoral debates put together by the House of Representatives to deepen its constitutional oversight on the executive since the removal of subsidy on petrol in May 2023.
We must all confront the stark reality of the economic, fiscal, and revenue challenges that our beloved nation, Nigeria, is currently facing.
The economic management team takes the stand to brief the legislators on efforts ongoing to save the naira and regain its declining value and also slow down the rising cost of living.
When you attack food production, raise food production, you bring down the price of food, you bring down inflation, you get a chance to bring down interest rates, and there lies the road to investment.
The budget provided more money, both on nominal and in real terms, than has ever been provided in the priority sectors.
With over $800 million in volume of transactions as at Monday this week, the CBN governor says there is light at the end of the tunnel.
A lot of the rating agencies have rated Nigeria positive. They've moved from being stable to positive. And that is a very, very good sign indeed.
The chairman of Federal Inland Revenue Service also added his voice to efforts at ensuring adequate resources accrue in government coffers.
We have the target for this year, based on the approved budget, to collect 19.2 trillion, which is 7.2 trillion more than what we actually collected this year.
A barrage of questions followed the team's presentations as legislators asked to know how efforts have been translated to tangible impact in the lives of the people.
The common man just wants to hear when rice prices will come back to 30,000 below.
The value of Naira has progressively declined from a state of concern to a state of fear and panic. But the value of other currencies across Africa have been largely stable. How do we reconcile their realities?
After about 5 hours, the Deputy Speaker highlights the takeaways from the session.
Happy hearing about investment in LNG. I'm happy hearing about the railway, especially the one you mentioned, Calabar area and all. It's very important for you to go through the whole country.
Hopes are rekindled just as expectations are high, with the words of assurance coming from President Bola Tinubu's economic team of an imminent reprieve. Joke Edson, TVC News.
To address the issue of food shortage or lack of enough food on the table of most Nigerians. Now, some of these will involve unlocking the foods that are available in most of the storage facilities around the country. You know that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture has some food reserve that is going to be made available to Nigerians. Government is also talking to major millers and major commodity traders.
Okay, then, with that background, let me come back to you, Mr. Mogaji, because, as you said, this should have been done even earlier. But then the question was even raised from studio by Dr. Oyele, as you heard. How are we going to go about that? We have the dubious reputation, if that is the word to use, for not really being that hot on records, statistics, and that kind of a thing. So how are we going to go about that? And I want to link this question to see if you could touch on what we need to do to increase stimulate greater food production, since a lack of that is what has led to even looking towards the grain reserves.
Well, thank you. First thing first is that the current challenges has nothing to do with this current administration. You know, I want to put that on the table. These have been inherited. However, the administration also ought to have planned for it if they have, let me use the word, practitioners who are working on managing affairs of the agri sector. Now, one of the conversations that I saw in the papers around this is that commodity traders who have stock will be arrested if they are not releasing it. It's very crucial for the administration to understand, and this is very germane to me, that you don't threaten them. It's a business they have operated. They took loans to do that. And because they took loans, they are operating a legitimate business. If you threaten them, they would weaponize food. And we don't want to see what happened in 2021. So what the government is trying to avoid, they may erupt a can of gunpowder if not careful. Now, we must be able to speak the truth to ourselves. We don't have enough in silos. Silos have been concessioned. The grains that, you know, earlier when the government said they'll release grains, they released grains, okay? And also engaged big commodity traders with the grains. But how they distributed the grains was not sustainable. You know, they gave some farmers 2 bags of corn. To do what? They will go and mill it into corn meal, corn flour. To do what? No. The maize ought to go to feed millers if you're looking at poultry. You know, it needs to go to some designated processors such that those processors will now create products that people can eat. People don't want the 2 bags of corn, half bag of corn. They will sell it for cash. So how are they going to do it? Who is going to do it? Ideally, I would say don't give grains to individuals. It would end up as cash, and those people will go and audit. Many sectors need grains now. The poultry needs grains. Generally, the livestock, even the FMCGs need grains. So government needs to be very clear on who is going to do it, when and how. Okay. If not, it will be ordered.
Okay. Now, I'm going to come back to you because it is my fault, and that was bad on my part. I asked a double-barreled question. So I'm going to come back to you for the question of suggestions on how to increase food production. But in the meantime, let me take Dr. Yele's perspective on that particular question.
Well, he has raised one important issue, which I think we should double down on. The fact that the silos have mostly been concessioned. So the question is, where are the grains? How many of the silos really do have the grains we are talking about? And this brings us again back to the issue of statistics. Mm-hmm. So that is one. The second thing is that I'm still struggling with the idea of releasing grains as a countermeasure to increase in price of food. It looks very much like using the wrong therapy for a particular ailment, like using Panadol for diarrhea. We're not having natural disaster. So the idea of using grains in the silos as a way of maybe call it palliative, mm-hmm. is at best a knee-jerk reaction, and it's not going to go too far in impact.
Okay.
So that much I need to emphasize.
All right. And then let me just add this question on, because African farmer Mogaji spoke about, produce, those engaged in that. And again, I think I might have seen one of the articles he was referring to, and the allegation in there is that those into the produce business are ferreting their stuff out of the country to neighboring countries because, as he pointed out, they want to maximize profit. They're in a business. And whereas we don't have enough, rather than what they are producing contributing to the, the stock here, they are said to be, transferring their goods, exporting is the word, exporting their goods. This is not the time for exporting, seems to be the thought. But as, Mr. Mogaji, explained in there, they're in a legitimate business, and usually they can do what they will with their business.
Yeah, definitely the use of force is going to be counterproductive. So, like he has said, no point trying to, repeat those statements, but simply just to say that by the time a force is being used on them, they would devise some other ingenious measures.
Force as the threat of sanctions.
Exactly, and they will go underground, and they know the terrain more than those who are in government offices, and so they know how to sidestep whatever action that the government wants to take. And at the end of the day, it will still end up, a failure. And I think that is one thing most to be avoided. And I think what should be done, which is very, very important. Yes, he has made a point that this particular cycle, was, an inheritance from the previous administration. That much can be understood. But then 8 months or, thereabout this is a long enough period to have thought about what is the current situation of food in this country in terms of abundance, in terms of pricing. And then, of course, when the issue of price increases came up, then, of course, there should have been people who should have been thinking about, various scenarios. And then how do we act if this happens? What measures do we take?
Yeah.
And so for us to be in the circumstance we find ourselves now, it's clearly an indication that there hasn't been any serious effort made in this direction. And one thing that makes this issue of food very, very important is this. Arab Spring in 2011 was sparked off by food.
I recall that.
And
especially the price of bread.
Yeah, bread in particular. And then of course the thing, you had that spread to all the Maghreb and the other Arab countries, and of course it led to many consequences. I don't want to start talking about that. So much about all those things. So we don't want a repeat of Arab Spring here. And so taking this issue of food seriously is very, very important. The farmers, we say, it's said in Yoruba that farmer is the king, for instance. And we don't treat the farmers as the king here. And the majority of the farmers, even including the commercial scale farmers, are mostly on their own. They have to struggle with bank loans. They have to struggle with the cost of input. They have to struggle with many of them who are also depending on the scale of production, also need power in one way or the other. They have to struggle with the issue of power. And then, of course, those who are into agro-processing, of course, a lot more of power is needed.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all these costs are really a problem for them. And so they are operating in a very difficult situation. And so if you don't make the policy environment suitable or conducive for them, of course, there will be a lot of problems. And then many of them are running out of business because of their inability to cope.
No doubt all of those things you mentioned probably will be factoring into my next question to Mr. Mogaji. Your thoughts on how to increase, to boost greater food production. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, first thing first, this administration needs to prioritize putting square pegs in square holes. Very crucial. Get people who have experience and expertise, who have done something with their experience. A lot of people have exposures without experience in this country.
Because I was going to say that that very suggestion, it seems to indicate to me that you don't think we're there yet as we currently stand.
By May 2024, if between 15th of February and 20th of February, there are 3 decisions need to take place that I will not discuss here so that I will not raise people's anxiety. If by 20th of this month, some decisions have not been taken, from May till like July, there may be a major challenge in Southwest. Major, you know, so, but I'm not saying that happened yet. Yeah, we're reaching out to say we need to be proactive. But bottom line, river basins. River basins is very crucial to Nigeria's food security. We've not been paying attention to river basins. And if we say, oh, the northerners are producing, the northern farmers are losing money. The traders are making fair money. They are also losing money across the value chain. The south of the country is not leveraging the basins available. They don't get the same support that other regions of the countries have. So until we pay attention
Why is that?
to
Why is that, Mr. Mogaji?
Yeah, it's because of the focus. It's not ethnic or religious. It's priority. The South has not prioritized food security. Previous administrations also have not prioritized sustainability. Everybody focuses on the North and North and North. Just one outbreak, which may likely happen this year, will disrupt production and supply from the North, and the other part of the country, let's say the southern part of the country, that has not prioritized. Most governors in Southwest, precisely, have not paid attention to agriculture. So we need first to ensure that the basins are working. The basins have lands both for irrigation and lands that you don't have for irrigation. I can categorically tell you that across the south of this country, the irrigation projects are not working.
Okay.
Not that they are not working, they are not utilized. While in the north, they are utilizing that, but productivity is lacking. So we need that to happen. 2 is that we need to engage farmers in capacity development. We need to focus on more youths, rural youths, not urban youths. Because everything we want to do in the country, we say apply online, apply online. The real people doing the farming will not be online applying. They are even supposed to take it on Facebook. So we need to pay attention to how we disseminate information.
Okay.
We also need to pay attention to communicating the opportunities in this adversity as against amplifying, we want to cushion this, we want to cushion that, poverty alleviation. No, every challenge we are facing is a big opportunity that we need government to set up platforms and portfolios to amplify it and say, we have this dam. It's able to produce 100,000 acres. If you want it, you will get it in 24 hours, but you must abide by these rules. It's not happening. We need a strong think tank, especially think tanks who have gone through, who have paid their dues, who have lost their money and know how to protect other people's money, including government.
No, thank you very much. Now, of course, Dr. Yele, this is a very wide subject, and so we can only touch on so many of the features of it. But this whole question of increasing food production, we haven't even talked about insecurity yet. And that we all know, experts have been telling us that. So what is the quantum of, injury, so to say, that has been done to our whole agricultural production as a result? I mean, you've spoken about other aspects, but the part of insecurity in the shortage, how is that significant?
Well, it is significant. And I was actually going to mention that, but before then, I actually thought about talking about corn in particular, which is a crop that cuts across the entire country and is consumed by almost every household. Now, with regards to corn, and I don't want to.
But what do we do with corn? You see, when I hear about strategic grain reserves, your mind goes to corn. Okay, Akamu. All right.
So many things. So Mr. Mogaji had talked about poultry, for instance. So it's consumed both by animals and humans.
Okay.
So there's a lot of competition for it. And that alone is actually an issue for strategic intervention, just so that we will be able to have enough for human consumption.
Because a lot of poultry businesses are being driven out.
Yes, exactly. Because, about 60% of the recurrent cost of production in poultry is on the source of energy, which is mostly corn.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we don't fix that, of course, the poultry industry would actually go under, and that's is most likely. So, but I want to say this about corn. There is a particular parasitic infestation that is called fall armyworm. It's doing a lot of devastation to corn all over the country, and since around 2017, it's affected so many different farms. Yes, and so those who are not knowledgeable on agronomy will not understand the damage it is doing. It destroys the plants when they are standing, and also reduces the productivity. But we can come back to that. But let me answer the question about insecurity. The rural insecurity is becoming increasingly a problem. In the past 1 week, we knew about the things that have happened in some localities in Ekiti State and in Ekiti local government in Kwara State, for instance. And all this, and of course, in so many other different parts of the country. So the agrarian population, mostly in the rural areas, are beginning to feel the sense of insecurity, much more than even before. And fears are being created, about that. I need to now use a personal example here. I abandoned a corn farm in Ogun State when I saw signs that the locality in which this corn is to be produced, there are, these herdsmen, parading around those places. And I think safety is more important. After plowing and planting and all of that, I had to abandon it. Yes. So if I should, one of the things I should be doing is to be on the farm. But,
here we are.
Yes. So it's one of those issues.
Okay. I'm going to take a break now so we can come back and, with fewer interruptions, necessary as those are sometimes. And then we'll look at still continuing on how we can boost agricultural production. How much more of dry season farming can we do? That when we come back. Stay with us, please. Okay, welcome back. Dr. Olukayode Oyeleye, Agric business analyst in studio, and African farmer Mogaji, former chairman, Agric Group, Lagos Chambers of Commerce and Industry, with us remotely. So let me go back. Let me go to the question. Just looking for ways to boost production. Is an increase in dry season farming doable? Is it on the cards?
Is that for me?
Yes, please.
Okay, yes. See, since 1995 to date, that's about 29 years, I've been commercially involved in dry season farming in and out of this country for 27 years. We know the terrain. Productivity with the facilities that federal and states have in this country, we only need productivity, which is to try to increase or triple the yield of what we have. And also, like I said, in the South generally, South, Southeast, Southwest, the irrigation facilities there have not been leveraged to up to 10%. Now, in the South generally, this is the time to launch into dry season farming that the rain season will take from you. You use the dry season irrigation to start, the rainfall takes it from you, and it is the most profitable time for investors to go into it. These are things that we expect government to be telling people. So, and don't forget, by the time the irrigation projects in the north, they stop releasing water around March to the farmers because of preparing for rice. At that time, when they stop releasing water around that March, it makes everything expensive. Tomatoes goes out of market. But in the South, the rains are about starting. So if we're able to take some advantage of knowledge of irrigation, one, knowledge of the rural community, because let's take for instance, Southwest, the way the farmers with irrigation on government properties in Shekweteri, in Shaki, or your state, reacts and relates is different from the ones at Okeodon in Ogun State, Idiroko. The dynamics of the rural engagement differs. That is what mostly kills irrigation under government projects here. So it requires a cocktail of approach that if we don't have people who understand this, they will just choose one size fits all and the projects will fail. But this is the time that Southwest or South can leverage to produce food and especially prepare if there's an outbreak, especially with an outbreak in the north, especially with our fresh foods. Let me say this year, a basket of tomato, just a few months, very soon, may hit 70, 80,000. But it can 100% be averted if we take action.
It goes back to that issue he raised about round pegs in round holes, and in other words, knowledgeability within the sector. Yes. Now, Dr. Oyeleye, in addition to anything else you might have wanted to comment upon, this administration, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, had promised 500,000 hectares of land, of farm land, to help boost the fight against food scarcity. How far can that go, and has it started?
Well, it's difficult for me to know if it has started, but how far it can go, I can talk about that. Now, because of the desirability, it will make a whole lot of difference if properly implemented. Because it's one thing to conceptualize an idea, it's another thing to implement it properly. So at the implementation level, a lot of things go wrong. So if there's a system to monitor for results, then of course I think it will make some difference. That's number one. Number two is the issue of knowledge that Mr. Magaji made reference to. In all of our conversations, where do we put our scientists who are in the 16 agricultural research institutes in this country, mostly idle? Their body of knowledge is not being brought to bear in public policy. And it's very interesting. Between Federal Ministry of Science and Technology and Federal Ministry of Agriculture, there are 16 agricultural research institutes, from production to processing, for instance. And when we are talking about food security, we shouldn't lay too much emphasis on production and ignore processing and storage. That's where the likes of Nigerian Stored Product Research Institute in Ilorin, for instance, comes in. And when you get to some of these research institutes, they look derelict. You know, you enter there, you don't really see, life as it should be. And many of the scientists are leaving the research institutes and moving into the universities, because you can, for decades, you can be in the research institutes and you simply just remain maybe at 1 or 2 levels, higher than when you entered. But in the university, in less than 10 years or thereabout, you could easily become a professor. And so they have more visibility in the academic environment than in the research institute.
They are crucial.
Yes, of course. So much of what we are even talking about, like what Mr. Magaji is saying, if we don't work with these scientists, it's one thing for us to have business skill. It's another thing for us to use the appropriate knowledge. And so if we don't use the appropriate knowledge and technology that we can harness from these various research institutes, we will be going, round in cycle, and that won't help us much.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Gbenga in Abuja. Go ahead now, please.
Good morning, Mr. Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
Good morning to your guests.
Thank you.
I want to put in 1 or 2 things there. I live in Abuja in the north, and we have 3 challenges farmers are facing with header. Buhari tried to solve this problem with Benue in the Middle Belt, when the Benue crisis erupted, going to Taraba and Plateau State, by creating Ruga of ranches. They could not get out of the day because politics was brought into it. And this problem is still persisting. How are farmers be able to know that if I plant my seed, like what happened to one of the elder statesmen in Ondo State? I forgot the name now, former Minister of Finance, where the headers
I think that's Chief Olufalaye.
And they lost millions of dollars. So what I'm saying that what are the government doing with this? Because this is one of the problems we are facing, affecting food security in Nigeria. Secondly, also is the issue of bandits who are ravening the Middle Belt and the rest. which are the good backers of the nation, that have slowed down productivity. If we don't tackle this, we don't put this confidence in the farmer to go to the farm, we may have a problem because the peasant farmers are the ones feeding most Nigeria. Not the big farm with machinery and the rest of things. In Abuja here, the talk of yam, it's the Buhari, peasant farmers that are feeding. When they have problem of the insecurity, this also taking them because in the Buhari area, in the Abuja area, we have problem with insecurity, so farmers cannot go to farm. And lastly, where there is no security and where there is no insecurity and a rule and a problem in the southwest, what are the governors doing there? How can they create a farm village where they will give solar panel, create schools and the rest for the youth so that they can settle down there? They don't have problem of going to hospital is there, everything is there, so that all year round season we can farm like the other is saying. The irrigation capacity, they revive it and make sure that these people are in that area, they are secured and they give them all the needs. I think we can solve this problem with security within 1 or 2 years. I mean, put security within 1 or 2 years. If we can do that, the government has a lot to do because they own the land. They own the land. That's my suggestion. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, Gwenga. There you go. You heard it all. Do you have any comments on that, Mr. Mogaji, especially as it relates to the earlier question I had asked about 500,000 hectares? That, I imagine, well, I'm really waiting on you to say how significant that is.
So I don't want to sound anti-government, but I would blame the people that advised the president on and that put that ahead before the president. The realities of this is 500,000 hectares. A bulldozer, a 300 horsepower bulldozer, will clear an hectare. That's 15 plots. That's 2.5 acres per day. Now, the bulldozer can only work mostly in the country around 5 months of the year. So that's like 155 days. If you calculate that, it takes about 3 years to effectively clear that 500,000 hectares because we don't have enough bulldozers in the country. Once the rains begin to fall, the bulldozers cannot operate. These are practical things, okay? So if you clear that 500,000 hectares and you plant even only corn at maybe even 3 or 4 tons per hectare, one poultry company that mills into feed mill will take all the 500,000 hectares. It's not sufficient for one.
Wow.
How much more the remaining? This is reality.
And by the way, Dr. Yele here in studio is nodding his head in vigorous agreement with what you are saying.
I've been planting corn for 20-something years. So I was irritated when somebody allowed the president to read that state. This is the practicals. Don't take my word. Call the bulldozer companies. All these things are crucial.
Okay.
So
all right.
I would rather ask them to be investing in better quality seeds so that the lands we have, we can do better on it. But they can also clear the 500,000 hectares for sustainability for the future. But it's not that 500,000 hectares will solve our problem. No.
All right. Ada, thank you very much for holding on. Ada has called in from Jos.
Good morning, Ayeri and your guest. Ada, calling from Jos Plateau State. Yes, very interesting headline. That is the reps asking the president, that's the FD, to release grains and all that. Mr. Ayeri, let me tell you something. It will not work. That is, releasing those grains will not solve the problem. It's not even, we are short of memory. It's not too long ago such things were done, even cash transfer. And I also said that time that these things are short-lived, they are temporary. The most reliable palliative is to get all our refineries working. Then the soaring food prices, services is mainly caused by the hike in the pump price of fuel and insecurity. So in fact, if I were Mr. President, let him reduce his 8-point agenda to 3. And that is on tackling this issue of the pump price of fuel. Let them give Dangote enough crude so that he doesn't have to go and be buying most of them in abroad again. So that's back to square one. Then he now faces this issue of insecurity. Make sure that all the forests are combed. We're not supposed to allow criminals to be living in those forests. and then they put the forest guards there, heavily armed forest guards, to stay in each of all these forests so that they won't find their way back into that place. So that will help farmers to go back to their farms.
All right.
Then again, another thing they should look at is, this food insecurity is also caused by cattle ravaging the farms. So let him adopt that money he's sharing. Let him use it to adopt ranching for them, so that at least we'll let the farmers have a relief of this respite in terms of destroying their crops by cattle that are just roaming. Mm-hmm. That's another way of looking at it.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Ada,
honestly,
for calling in. Appreciate your call. Of course, as Ada says, these things are really interconnected. Yeah. She zeroed in and thought that, as she said, all of this is really caused by, but we're looking at developments in agriculture and what we can do to ameliorate the situation without prejudice to Ada's submissions. So even let me just stay there, because business, especially when we go into business, everything that Ada says begins to come into play. And I'm particularly looking at the poultry business. It's not a small business in Nigeria. It's a veritable source of protein, eggs, and
it's also a major employer of labor.
And a major employer of labor. Yeah. So, but they are winding up, we are hearing. They are winding up. Principal among the reasons they are doing that is in increasing numbers is because they just can't afford to continue with the current price of feeds that Ada was talking about earlier. So what is it that we can do across board to help that situation?
Well, first and foremost, what I will start from the attitudinal perspective. The attitudes of people in government towards people who are in agriculture should change.
Okay.
And whatever is done for
so
the farmers.
At the moment, as you pointed out earlier, using the Yoruba expression,
yes.
The farmer is not king yet.
Yes, right now the farmer is not king. The farmer is a beggar. The farmer is at the mercy of the government. And of course, it is also a known fact that in many states of this country, that many farmers, particularly the rural farmers, are appendages of political parties. They are used as instruments for electioneering, campaigns and stuff like that. So farmers should be treated the way they should be treated. And policies should be focused and targeted. And they should arise from the findings from out there, not imposition. Okay. It shouldn't be a top-down approach. It should be rather the opposite, bottom-up. And in other words, and I said, when I was called, August, when I was in Ekiti, in a rural place, when your office insisted that I must do an interview, I said in that interview that the ministers are not expected to restrict themselves to offices.
Okay. Okay.
They're supposed to be on the field themselves. Yes, they should have a feel of
practical knowledge.
Of course, they should have a feel of what goes on there. The governors, on whose shoulder is vested the authority over land, in the concurrent list of the Constitution, should also rise up to this challenge. They are closer to the people than the central government, and so they have a big role to play also in ensuring that those who are involved in agriculture at whatever level along the value chain are properly taken care of. It should not be seen as doing them a favor.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. George. Thank you for holding on, Mr. George. Everybody who has called in today has had to hold on a bit because of the importance of the subject and the technicalities, so we have to wait out the experts. Go ahead now, please, Mr. George.
Greetings to your guest. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay, the discussion this morning is quite revealing. I think the president needs an expert as a special advisor on agriculture. Experts like the ones you are talking to. I'm just thinking aloud. But you remember in the manifesto of the president, I read there about commodity boards, where they will be like a middleman between the farmers and the market. So in crisis periods like this, I think such boards would be relevant. I don't know why that one has not been given effect to. It goes to speak to the remarks the man of the gentleman on Zoom said.
Okay.
About the quality
African farmer
and about the quality, yes, about the quality of staff involved in our agricultural ministry. So I think, like the president used to have advisors on other subject matters apart from the ministers, he should also have a special advisor who is an expert in agriculture.
Okay.
A special advisor on agriculture. Then you know that grains were given out in the previous administration like this to farmers. It didn't get to most of the farmers.
Yeah.
The politicians.
That's the point that the doctor made earlier.
So how are we going to avoid that this time? It takes somebody who is very, very familiar with the field to ensure. That's why I'm asking for a special advisor. Somebody who is not in the system of civil servants that knows how to get these things to the farmers themselves.
All right, then. Well, thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. Really do appreciate your call. Now, we're fast running out of time. It always happens when you're really having fun. As Mr. George was saying, there's so much knowledge being shared here. Now, maybe this will be the final question by the time you and maybe somebody from home wants to comment on the matter. Nigeria is the world's biggest producer, it is said, of cassava. Let me bring to Mr. Mogaji the question, how exactly do we maximize this? I mean, it's great to hear, but if we're the biggest producer, surely we should be benefiting from that.
So we're the biggest producer. I'll touch on two things, cassava and corn. We're the biggest producer, but we had the least value, okay? We are the biggest producer, but our yield is not half of what you have the third, the fifth producer. Productivity. We consume a lot than most countries. We don't process like most countries. There's nothing bad in that. We can produce to eat, but when we increase productivity by adding some inputs to the cassava, I've grown cassava extensively also.
Yes.
By adding inputs to the inputs that will make it yield faster and better without anything inorganic, we will get the result. We're not processing. I would say under the last administration and President Jonathan, President Obasanjo, all of them did say, there's a something billion-dollar market for cassava.
Okay.
Yet, we don't have enough cassava sticks to plant. That's very crucial. Now, so let me just jump into the corn. Now, when you ask the
question, very briefly, please. Very briefly,
the
please.
Corn. Every chewing gum you have, there's corn. Diapers, matchbox, envelope, everything has corn. Now, so we need to pay attention to productivity in corn, and we need to also check poultry. With the poultry with corn, we need to grow more corn in the Southwest because 70% of poultry is in the Southwest. When we spend $3 million on logistics to bring corn to Southwest, it will continue to go high. Thank you.
Okay, then. Thank you very much for keeping it brief, Mr. Mogaji. Funshaw has called in. Is it? Funshaw is in Niger State. Good morning.
Yes, Mina, yeah.
In Mina.
Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead, quickly, please.
Your program is a very interesting one. We are all happy with the program. It is really giving us a good insight about what is happening. Yes. Well, thank you, Onkuyori, for giving me this advantage. So we thank your guest.
Yes, please continue.
The issue is very, very important because a lot of people are going on the issue of food and high cost of living. In Niger State, where we have a food basket, we can get yam, 5 bags of yam for at least for 2,000, 2,500. But now it's out of the reach of the poor.
Yeah.
So you can see. That's why you see some little demonstration and a protest about 2 days ago in Mina here.
Okay.
So the president should please act on this issue
Okay then. Thank you very much, Mr. Funshi. I beg your pardon for rushing you a bit, but we're fast running out of time. And I did want to get Dr. Yele's perspective on the comment of Mr. Mogaji that, yep, we might be the biggest producer of cassava, but our yield is nowhere near even maybe the 5th largest producer.
Yes, our yield is low, but in addition to that, the value addition is a major area of challenge. We've not really laid as much emphasis as we should on value addition. That much is where the...
And by value addition, you mean?
Yeah, he has mentioned quite a number of products, you know, high-end products.
All of which, which maize is an integral part of.
Even cassava. Even cassava.
I mean, sorry, I beg your pardon, I meant to say cassava.
Your carton.
All of these.
You use... you know, you can use cassava to produce the gum for the cartons that you have around you, and so many other things like that. We talk about like this corn, sorbitol, and you know, even cassava. You can get your toothpaste and stuff like that. You know, so I don't want to.
Involved in
I don't want to go into mentioning some of those high-end products because there are many which Nigeria can actually leverage upon.
But we're not.
We're not.
So the
definitely are not. And the fact is this. And the fact is this.
Increase that.
And the fact is this: the few who are involved in this country, especially let me use cassava. I know 2 ladies, one in Oyo, one in Ekiti, strong ladies involved in this cassava production, but how much of government support is actually coming to them?
That's going to be the question.
So I know them. I can't be talking about them on this.
You know, we can't really go much further because we've run out of time. But we did hear that the president was abreast of everything that was going on while he was away, the complaints, the frustration, the hunger. And we hear that he has, you know, set up a number of committees to swing in an emergency mode into production. We're going to have to leave it here. I'm sure that there will be advisors, you know, echoing or telling him some of the things that we've discussed here this morning. And